presented by Dr. Anthony Padovano, a distinguished professor of literature and philosophy at Ramapo College of New Jersey. Professor Padovano received his Bachelor of Arts degrees at Seton Hall University, an MA at New York University, and another at the University of St. Thomas in Rome. He received his PhD at Fordham University. He also received 3 degrees, including Doctor of Sacred Theology from the Pontifical Gregorian University in Rome.
When we began the American Catholic Council, our intention was not only to show how we are truly American, but also how we are also simultaneously Catholic. And so both elements are necessary to understand the American Catholic Council. We are Americans, and therefore, by the very constitution of our nation, the idea that there were rights that an individual had that could not be taken away from that person by government was part of the original thinking of what our nation and culture would be. To be human, after all, is to have rights. And if they are rights, it means that they are not ever earned or even given. They come with the very fact of our human existence. As Americans, we have been raised to believe that some of these rights need to be carefully articulated. The right to due process, the right to freedom of speech, the right to believe or not, the right to have freedom of assembly, the right to dissent, and so on and so forth. As Catholics, it seems to me, we must make it clear that one does not become less American by becoming Catholic, that somehow or other these rights would be taken away in order that one might be more loyally a Catholic. That would create an enormous conflict for an individual believer. Both of these rights are fundamentally the right to be Catholic and the right to be American. These very fundamental rights are indeed compatible. This nation was established, as we know, as a democracy, and a democracy is also in the very constitution of the Catholic Church. From the very beginning, it was the community that chose who its leaders would be, which ministries would be exercised. And that community was never meant to give away those rights. In fact, the First Ecumenical Council in 325 made it clear that no priest can be validly ordained unless that particular priest was chosen by a community. So it was not the imposition of hands by a bishop which made someone a priest. That was part of the process. But prior to that, and more fundamental than that, was the fact that the community actually selected this person before the imposition of hands. Now, rights, we know, are not absolute. They cannot be exercised if they lead to the exploitation of others. And so, as we formulated the American Catholic Council, we reflected considerably on the notion of having both rights and responsibilities. And we drafted 10 of these in order to give a sense of what we were trying to declare about ourselves as uniquely American Catholics. We can't believe that a community, as the Christian community is, whose charter was the Beatitudes, whose constitution was the gospel or the good news, and whose credential was that we love one another, we cannot believe that a community structured along these lines would have difficulty with the fundamental notion of human and American rights. And so with all of this in mind, we tried to bring about a series of 10 statements, which I will read briefly and comment on as we go through them. The first Bill of Rights and Responsibilities reads that the integrity of every Catholic and the right of conscience must be respected. It's hard to believe that we would ask people to surrender their conscience in order to become a Catholic. And in fact, the Second Vatican Council made it quite clear that this would be a violation of the very integrity and dignity of the individual. The second right was that every Catholic, by virtue of baptism, has the right to a truly Christian community, to pastoral leadership that values the individual believer, and to the Eucharist, which is a sacramental celebration of God's love and presence. As you can see, baptism is going to emerge as the fundamental sacrament of equality that binds us together into community and that gives us a foundation for the rights about which we are speaking. The third Bill of Rights and Responsibilities says, every Catholic has the right to be considered for ministerial leadership of the community and to be selected for the position if the choice of the community and the charisms of the candidate lead in that direction. So we are saying that you have a right to be considered, everyone, for any position of ministerial leadership, but that obviously the choice of the community and your capacity to exercise that ministry or your charism must be taken into account.